Anna Knaub is a dedicated stay-at-home mom whose passions reside in making a difference and being servant-hearted. When she's not chasing her two tiny humans around, Anna loves being outdoors, gardening, or nerding up with Lord of the Rings series with her husband Ethan. She's an avid baker, crafter, and adventurer. They currently live in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, nestled amongst the land of chocolate and cows. Anna attended the University of Valley Forge, where she met her husband and graduated with a degree in secondary English education with a concentration in medieval and Renaissance literature. She's over 20 years of childcare and teaching experience, including Vacation Bible School, advanced placement course, life skills, online teaching, and coaching. You can get to know her better at her blog, The Nurtured Bee. Anna, welcome.
Thank you. I feel like you should have that memorized at this point. It's been a few times. I love your mug. That is from a fine quotation. And I know that because she is one of my favorite artists. And I have a collection of her stuff. So I see you. This is why we're friends, my friend. But yes, thank you for having me back again and introducing me once again. Well, this is my third and final chat for the week. Thank you for everybody who has joined us so far. Guys, we have made it to Friday, especially to Ethan and Lisa. If you're around there, you guys, you have been here all week, so we appreciate you. And when I first learned about the summit, I don't think the website had even finished loading when I had already responded to Lisa and knew that this was the topic that I wanted to talk about. I loved the other things I talked about this week, but this is really something that I'm passionate about and where my heart is, because I have spent so long working with kids and youth, honestly. And I had some pretty significant experiences as a classroom teacher that have kind of formed a lot of my feelings about this. And so what we're going to be talking about is speaking life into your children. And we're going to start a little bit with some spiritual foundations. I'm going to run through a few things. I spent some handy dandy time in my Bible preparing for this. So pulling out my Christian college notes there, friends. So spiritual foundations, I want to hit with Psalms 11:3 to start with. If the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? Friends, we are living in a very broken world and we are living in a crumbling culture, right? So how do we raise the next generation of righteous leaders? How do we speak into them and prepare them, not just for the world that we are living in, but for them to then go on and have Christian households and Christian homes and life-giving homes. If you are a homeschooler, you more than likely have heard the name of the Clarkson family. You have heard of Sally and Clay Clarkson, Whole Heart Ministries. All of their kids are very active in ministry as well. Sally and Clay actually wrote Life-Giving Parents. Sally wrote Life-Giving Home, all very kind of warm and fuzzy, wonderful things, homeschooled all of their children. And so great resource there. I'm sure Lisa could plug that. So how do we do this, right? How do we do it? Let's start with some biblical foundations here. Ready? God is, right? Alpha and Omega. He is the I am. He is good all the time. All the time, God is good. He's a mighty fortress. Friends, let's pick a song here, right? The Holy Spirit, and according to John, is the advocate, the helper, the Spirit of the living God. And Jesus is the Word. He's the truth. He's wonderful Counselor, Prince of Peace. And we are Imago Dei. We are created in their image. Genesis 1:26 says, let us make man in our image, in our likeness. We are the image bearers of Christ. That's you, that's your spouse, that is your kids, that is your neighbor 3 doors down, or the crazy uncle at your Christmas parties, right? And talking about spiritual foundations, we love the fruit of the Spirit. In our house, I often joke that my 4-year-old knows the fruit of the Spirit. She can say them backwards and forwards, but we do not know how to use them quite yet. But friends, against them, there is no law. You cannot be too patient, you cannot be too joyful, and you can't be too loving, right? So those are kind of some of our basic foundational, very, very basic, okay? My theology husband's probably twitching in the back room. Very basic theological foundations, right? These are our 3 key people, who we are, and the fruit of the Spirit. But here's the thing. You can teach your children every foundation, but if you are not speaking life into them or treating them as if you believe the spiritual foundations, they're not going to believe it for themselves. There's a difference between Christian consumerism and doing the things and being life-giving and supporting and encouraging your children, which takes us into the actual speaking life part here. One of my favorite verses is Proverbs 31:26, and it is, she speaks with wisdom and faithful instruction is on her tongue. That should be like the homeschool mom mantra everywhere, right? Words have the power of life and death. Those who love it will eat its fruit. It's another one, Proverbs 18:21, okay? Our words have so much power, and we don't even realize how in passing something can make a difference. Decisions that we make every day, words that we say every day can have a major impact. I had a student when I was working in public school. He had a really rough home life. He was actually homeless. He was working on being emancipated from his parents. And he did not have great behavior in school. I had him in the fall semester, and he was not a fan of me. And that was fine. But I saw something in him, and I knew that he was smart. He didn't belong in my like lower level class. He was stuck there. He was stuck in what people had told him he was, a behavior problem. He wasn't going to make it because he didn't have a support system. And so the next semester, I was going to have him in class again. And honestly, I cried because I didn't think I would make it. But I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go in. I'm going to have a good attitude about it. Y'all, something happened to him too, because he made this same decision. And he was like, you know what? I have Miss K again, and we made it through the fall, and we're going to make this work. He has ended up being one of my most favorite students of all time. And I was able to make a profound connection and support him and speak life into him, okay? When he was in and out of court trying to get emancipated, he had very few people speaking into his life. All of the other teachers had marked him. When I told my class that I was leaving, he was absent that day. And so the next day I took him into the hall. And this 16-year-old boy broke down in the hallway and said, nobody else believes in me. You can't leave. It was my first year teaching, and never expected to have an impact on a student's life like that. Which was not scary, but just shocking for me. Like, oh, what I do does matter. What I say does matter. How I have responded in love and compassion and empathy. And don't get me wrong, correction happened when it needed, right? And that's to say, you can speak life to anybody. This does not just happen in your 4 walls. You can make a difference at your co-op, at your church, at the kid in the grocery store, my friends. And so he is one of the reasons why, like I said, this is so important to me, because I've seen this. I know what kids look like when they don't have it, right? As I said, I have a 4-year-old, and she is wonderful. She's also a hot mess. As most 4-year-olds are. We joke that my children are free range. And, we don't always make good choices, right? But I always remind her, you are not a bad child. You are not bad. You are not bad, but you made a bad choice. That does not make you bad. You are not a bad girl. I love you. Daddy loves you. Jesus loves you. You made a bad choice. And you know what? That's okay. So let's do better. She often seeks validation in what she does. She just has a very big emotional bucket, right? And so, and not every kid is like that. Not every kid seeks out kind of that validation and that feedback. My younger one, she's not quite like that. But I make sure to speak into her just as much as I do the older one, even though she's not necessarily actively seeking it. Okay. Some of us need to speak life into ourselves. Some of us may live in a constant state of criticism and don't even realize it, right? How often do you do something and you think, oh, I can't believe I did that? Or you're so hard on yourself. Many of us are our harshest critics, which is why if somebody says something to us, we shut down or we blow up because we already know it, right? And for me, I had actually been bullied as a child and had a lot of kind of backwards compliments, like, you're so smart, but, or especially with talking, I'm a talker, can you tell? And so it was great a lot of the time. And then it was like, oh, she's so social, but, and, I was always kind of a little different. I didn't always have friends, books were my friends, my dog was my friend. And I have had to retrain my heart. I've had to retrain my way of thinking. And it's never too late to do that. Okay. Whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, and whatever is admirable, right? Anything is excellent or praiseworthy. Think about such things. Guys, that includes you too. All right, this whole bubble here of speaking life, you can only feed into your children what you yourselves have in your heart. And so if you are not encouraging yourself, if you are not finding your purpose and identity in the place where it belongs, it's going to be hard for you to do it for them. But what I also can tell you is that in the steps and the different things I'm about to share with you, is that in what I've been doing for my children, I did start doing for myself. And I thought, if I want my children to do this, if it's good for my children, then I should be doing it too, right? I did it a little backwards, and that's okay. You guys just have the benefit of me telling you that I did it backwards so that you don't, right? You can breathe life into your children. You can breathe life into yourself. You can breathe life into your spouse. It's never too late. One of my favorite things to do is you are statements. And I love the example of in Matthew 16 is when Jesus changes Simon's name to Peter. And in verse 18, he says, and I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. Jesus changed Peter's entire identity. You are the rock. Recently, friends of mine at church, I was in my Jane Austen shirt, which I wore yesterday, funny enough. They told me I was the cool kid. And I laughed, but then they were kind of quite adamant about it. Like, no, really, you're like the cool kid of the nerds, which is funny in and of itself. And I've got to tell you, I thought I had worked through a lot of that childhood bullying. This $5,000 face did not look like this, 15 years ago. But something in my heart changed. It was like God had taken something that had still somewhere in my heart been broken and rectified that, right? God restores what is lost and what is broken. Always, always. One day, probably 1,000 years from now, I will tell everybody about how I'm like the poster child of that. I'm not even that old yet. God restores what is broken. And you are statements are a great way to lay some of those foundations. With my children, you are smart, you are kind, you are brave, you are confident, you are compassionate, you are loving, you are gentle. Are we always? No. It's just like the fruit of the spirit. Do we know all of these things? Absolutely. Do we use them? Not necessarily. Does she cover her ears and go, "Ugh, mom"? Yes, yes, she does. Are there nights where she asks for it and she snuggles in and she needs that validation? You bet. Okay. Whether she wants it or not, she's going to hear it. I tell her, I said, all right, I'm going to say your words. And she goes, "Ugh, okay." And I sit there and I do it every night at bedtime. Bedtime is a great night to do this, by the way, especially if you have younger ones, because they don't want to go to bed. So you kind of have a captive audience because they want to be able to stay up and you want to talk to them. And bedtime is a great time for this. And it's a really gentle way to wrap up the day. If you've had a great day, you get to talk about how great that day was, right? And affirm the things that happened. If you had a rough day, friends, I apologize to my kids. And there are some parents that don't believe in that, and that's okay. But sometimes it's me and it's not them. And so, you know what? Mommy had a hard day and I was frustrated because we were struggling to make decisions, you and me. And you know what? I'm sorry. I yelled at you today and I'm sorry. It's a great time to do that and wrap up the day well so that your child is going to sleep secure in you, right? Because we don't ever want our children to be unsecure in us. We don't want them to feel unsafe emotionally, physically, spiritually, right? So by wrapping up the day well, our children could go to sleep knowing that they are secure in those things with you. And that consistency is really helpful. I feel a little crazy talking about it. I'm not going to lie, but I'm telling you, I have been doing it with my children for almost a year now, and it works. The change that I have seen in my children outside of just age, it works. Okay. Sometimes speaking life into your children is holding your tongue. Ironically, our pastor on Father's Day spoke on kind of this topic of speaking life in your children, though I'm certain I picked my topic before he did. That's all I'm saying. But he said, sometimes keeping quiet is better because if you talk, you make it worse, right? We've all had that. And it could be the friend or the parent that they want to be the fix-it. They want to have the answer. They have the commentary or the critique. Sometimes you just want to talk it out. Sometimes you just want to say it. Sometimes you're going through something and you don't want to say it at all. The power of presence is a real thing. I had a friend, her mom passed away and she was sitting outside by herself. And I went out and I said, you know what? I'm not going to say anything. There's nothing to say, unless you want me to. But I'm just going to sit here. And if you want to talk, we can. If you don't, that's cool too. But I'm not going to leave you alone right now. And we did. And we sat there. And eventually she started talking. But in that moment, she didn't need somebody to say, you know what, your mom is with Jesus now. And it's, she's dancing with the angels and singing his praises, or, there's no suffering. She didn't need a fix it. She didn't need somebody to be joyful and jolly and tell her things that she knew. She needed somebody to just be there and know that she wasn't alone. And sometimes that speaks life too. It doesn't have to always be verbal. One of my other favorite things that I do with my kids, and I've encouraged a lot of my friends to do, is declarations. There is an app called the Glorify app. Friends, I have no affiliation with it. There's no link, anything. I think I came across it on like a targeted Facebook ad, no joke. And they have a whole bunch of declarations and meditations that are all like Christian based. And I found this great morning one called Strong and Courageous. And it's like 3 minutes. Not only does my 4-year-old just about have it memorized, but my 2-year-old started saying it too. And it is so adorable. And so at the breakfast table in the morning, we listen to our morning declaration. I am strong and courageous. Today is going to be a good day. The Lord is my shepherd, right? It starts us off on the right foot. Are they old enough to go sit and have a little morning devotion time yet? Not really. They are very busy. We don't really sit still. We're doing the 1,000 hours outside challenge, and we're like crushing it because we don't sit still. And so, you know what, for us in this season, sitting down and having like this devotion time doesn't really work for us. But these declarations are great. I heard Priscilla Shire speak, I think it was on a podcast. She just kind of scrolled through, and she was talking about how she has declarations that she speaks over her sons before they leave the house every day. And I saved this because Lisa, I knew that you were going to want to put the link in the chat. So I have it for you. And so she has, there we go. She has declarations that she speaks over her kids every day. And a lot of them are scriptural. But she tells them, she has 3 boys, God bless her. You are a man of integrity and character. You will love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. You will be a blessing to your teachers and a blessing to your friends. You are the head and not the tail. You are above and not beneath. You are a leader, not a follower. You are the temple of the Holy Spirit. You are a man of valor. You have the whole armor of God so that you can stand against the schemes of the devil. You will bless the Lord at all times, and his praises shall continually be in your mouth. She says it to him every morning. And she said the same thing. Some days her kids are like, go ahead, say it. And other days are like, all right, mom, say it. I'm a superhero today, right? But think about how powerful that is for your kids. Like, mom said, I'm going to crush it today. And they're walking out the door, or, their bedroom down the hall, whatever, homeschool kids. But they are starting their day off with that blessing and that life and those words over them, right? That is like a bubble of awesome, right? And it feels funny at first. It can feel awkward. It was kind of awkward for me when I started doing it too. Like, she doesn't really know what I'm talking about. My parents never did this to me, so it didn't really feel natural. But it's gotten easier, and now it is part of our routine. And there are some times where she goes, Mom, I am not brave. And I said, well, you crawled all the way to the top of the monkey swing on the swing set today, and you tried something new, and that was brave. She's like, oh, okay, maybe, and again, she's 4. You guys probably have bigger issues than that, with some of your teenagers. Sometimes being brave is talking to the kid who's new at youth group, and maybe they don't dress like everybody else, or maybe they smell funny. It's summertime, y'all. # teenagers. Again, I used to work in a high school classroom. I understand that smell. To my youth friends, bless you. Maybe being brave is speaking in class. Maybe being brave is trying something new to eat. I'm a super picky eater, and I started eating parsnips this year and making like parsnips and leek and potato soup. And I'm super proud of myself, y'all. That is brave for me, because I got like sensory taste stuff, and I was proud of myself, right? Give your kids tangible examples if they need them. Sometimes they won't, but sometimes you're going to be, Mom, I was not smart today. I made not good choices, or I bombed that physics test. Dr. Moon, like, she crushed me in biology today. Whom I love, and I know that if she's not here, she's listening to it, which is why I said that. And you know what? That's okay. And that's when you say to them, you know what? You don't have to be a genius today, but you did other smart things. And you know what? You did really good on your math test. You turned all of your homework in this week. Even if you didn't do great on it, you turned all your homework in this week. And I'm real proud of you. Take the time to do it. You will be amazed at the conversations that come out of that. Something else that I like to do is I like to just have music, worship music on, usually. Sometimes it's a John Williams playlist on Pandora. Most of the time it is worship music though. Even if it's just instrumental, I'm somebody, I just like to have music going. I know that there's a whole, like, oh, silence and we need to just sit in silence thing. It's fine and dandy. I'm cool with it. But I like to have music on while we're putzing around the house during the day, okay? It's also incredible, I've noticed, what happens to attitudes when the worship music isn't on. And how often I find myself singing along to a song and my attitude changing while I'm doing the dishes, while I'm picking up the Legos for the 15th time, while I am cleaning up the spilled paint water from watercolors this afternoon. How having that tune in the background changes my heart. And when it's not on and things happen, how easy it is to get frustrated or kind of be out of that attitude. And maybe that's not for you. Maybe that's too much sensory. You've got 6 kids and the dog's barking. And listen, I feel that too. Again, I have free range children here and a 70-pound horse dog. So I live that too. But it's another thing that I like to use to speak life. And it's real cute listening to my kids sing 6 different worship songs and hymns mashed up because they know like 2 lines from each. But their heart is there. And that's the life and the joy that I want to instill in them. Okay. And sometimes, just in general, your kids are going to struggle. Mental health is real. And with social media and comparison culture and seasonal stuff, depending on where you live, hormones, y'all do not underestimate the power of hormones, especially in teenagers. Am I right? The statistics on children on antidepressants and anxiety meds are astounding. They are just wild. The statistics on children taking their own lives is crushing. And at some point in time, just like any of us, your child is probably going to go through a season. There's hope here though. There's good news. They're not alone, because some of the greatest heroes of the faith struggled, right? If you look at Psalms, it's basically a diary of David. I laugh a little bit that it kind of reads like a teenage girl sometimes, because he always starts out like, my life is so terrible, which, okay, to be fair, he had armies after him, okay? He had a little bit of reason to be dramatic. But you can sit it side by side with Samuel and go, oh, he was in the cave here. He was being pursued here, right? But it's very clear that David, off and on in his life, struggled with mental health. He went through seasons. He went through valleys, right? Elijah in Kings 19, he went and hid in a cave. Our pastor put it was after Jezebel said something, and our pastor said he basically went and was depressed and like his life was falling apart after the equivalent of a Facebook post. And so Elijah went through season of depression. Job literally laments the day of his birth, right? Job 7, the title of that is My Life Has No Hope. Okay. But Paul in Second Corinthians, in 2 Corinthians 1:8-11, he talks about we were under great pressure far beyond our ability to endure, so that we despaired of life itself. They despaired of life itself. That's like kind of dark, guys, right? He says we felt we had received the sentence of death, but on him we have set our hope. Paraphrased a little bit there. You can look it up. That he will continue to deliver us as you helped us by your prayers. So what does that tell you? A few things. Y'all, these men spoke to God. Okay, again, these are like the heroes of the faith. And they went through seasons. So it's easy for us as adults to sometimes say, you don't really have problems. You know, we feel like getting a bad grade on a test isn't a problem. We feel like a boyfriend breaking up with you isn't a problem because, you know, you're going to have another one in a few weeks or a few months, you know. But for our students, these are real problems and it is their life, right? And it can have just as much of an effect on them as it is if we are struggling to pay our bills, if we are concerned about our job, okay? Again, they have just as much right and reason to go through seasons as we do as adults. And we forget that often. But again, there are things that you can do to help them through that, okay? One of those is obviously continue to pray for your children. Pray to protect them from these seasons. Pray for the strength to support them through these seasons. And do just as the Corinthians had prayed for Paul in them, right? He says, as you helped us by your prayers, do not feel like that is not good enough, okay? The power of prayer is a strong one, right? Continue to speak life into them and over them, okay? They may have hardened hearts towards it. They may be kind of shut down, but they're hearing it. Continue to say the declarations, continue to give them the you are statements, okay? Because those are foundational. And if you're not speaking that life, it's even easier to stay in the depths, okay? Something else that I love to, a friend of I kind of joke about is be Elijah, okay? Let them Elijah. We have a 3-day wallow rule. And so nap and snack, right? Sometimes they just need a break. Sometimes something happens, you know what? We're homeschoolers. Most of us have the flexibility. Give them 3 days. You know what? You need to do some reading, do some bare minimum stuff. Take a nap, have some snacks. But after 3 days, you need to shower. You need to make sure that you're drinking your water. You need to eat some real food and you need to walk out the door and sit in the sun, okay? 3-day wallow rule. It's a real thing. I have used it a number of times myself. When things happen, I give myself 3 days. 3 days to feel the feels, let it happen. And then I go, all right, my 3-day wallow rule is up. It is time to move on. I have a friend, she just went through a family loss and she followed the 3-day. Grief is very different. I will say that grief is very different, but she gave herself 3 days to really sit in it and really feel it. And that's the other day she was just texting me and she's like, I've got all these feels today, Anna. I'm like, feel them, girl, feel them. But she has gone through so much of the process and she's like, I'm so glad that I took those 3 days because I feel so much better walking forward in this, that I took that time. And it doesn't have to be as extreme as that, but I'm telling, there's something about that 3-day wallow rule, man, it works. And so you know what? If your teenager needs 3 days after their girlfriend breaks up with them to just like play Madden, give them 3 days. Boys, if that's what he needs to do is sit and play Madden and drink Mountain Dew for 3 days, then let him do it. Just kind of suck it up and just be like, you know what? I'll just pump them with water and electrolytes when the 3 days are done, right? Don't knock it. Yes, C.S. Lewis. Ethan, don't get me started on that one there. But as Paul said, the takeaway here is the hope, right? It is one of the key foundations of all of this. We need to make sure that we are instilling in our children hope, right? Even if they had a bad day, there's hope that the sun will rise tomorrow, right? Even if the world is dark today, there is hope that it could be better tomorrow. There's hope that they could be that better, right? It is the hope is that regardless of circumstances, we are held. We're held. And that is promised to us, right? Hope sustains us when we are in deep despair. Y'all, I don't know about you, but there have been seasons where I feel like I don't hear anything. It feels like I am forgotten. I feel like, oh man, Sight and Sound they did David this year, guys, and soundtrack is incredible. And I love when they do the my God, why have you forsaken me? And I've, even since seeing it just a few months ago, I can't tell you how many times I've listened to that soundtrack and just been reminded that from my enemies, I have been saved, right? Hope sustains us when we are in deep despair, and glory is on the other side, right? Colossians 1:24-27 talks about, to them, God has chosen to make known among the Gentiles the glorious riches of this mystery, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory, right? That hope is what we cling to. That hope helps build those foundations with God and the Holy Spirit and Jesus and the fruits of the Spirit, right? We need to feed that to our children. And you know what? There are going to be days where you're hopeless, and it's okay to let them see that. It's okay to let them see when you're struggling. It's okay to let them in on some of that. You do not have to have perfect faith to speak life into your children. You don't. You do not have to have perfect theology, whatever that means anymore. You do not have to have anything perfect, right? But you can give your children hope, because you know what? 10 years ago, this was not my life. It was not my life. And one day my children will know the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And I will tell them, not because I want them to do what I've done, not by a long stretch. And I'm sure most of us can say that, but because they can see that I walked through it on the other side, that God restored my lost years and that God redeemed, right? And we can speak that life into our children. And that's not an excuse for them to make bad decisions, because God will make it all better. God is not a cleanup crew, my friends. Okay, let me make that clear. Not a cleanup crew. But he does turn beauty to ash, or he does turn ashes to beauty. And we do have that hope and that faith. Let your children see the wins and the struggles. Let them see you be in the word. Let them see you sing the worship songs off key. Hurts me sometimes. Let them sing the worship songs off key, right? Doesn't have to be perfect. Make a joyful noise. Amen. Do the silly VBS songs and dances, okay? I don't know about you guys. I grew up doing most of the Lifeway songs, to ABC, you must be AC. The truth code is the BIBLE, right? Truth track, I could name most of them. It's probably painful. Do it with them. Do it with them, because those are the moments and the things that are going to help build that faith. Those little tiny seeds, those little tiny nuggets are going to allow you and make it easier for you to speak that life into your children. That was a big one. My dog is destroying something behind me there. Lisa and Ethan, I see you making notes and comments there. Hey, I made it to like my 45 minutes today, guys. So yay for me.
All righty, Anna, you ready for questions?
I am.
Yeah, so Ingrid, Mom, do you guys have any questions? Post them in the chat. Took a lot of notes. I'm trying to think of actual questions. But yeah, it's Mom and Dad have prayed with us and over us and for us for years now. Except when I'm at school, Dad has prayed for me almost every night, like
Yeah.
the Levitical prayer before we go to bed. So yeah, seriously, pray with your kids, bless your kids. We're declaring your sons, you are this. That's the thing. Like, yeah, I need to do that for myself more often. Just own the identity, remember who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great stuff.
My sister and brother-in-law, in their bathroom, they essentially have a list of like you are statements along with the scriptural reference that goes along and supports that kind of thing. So like, I mean, literally every time you sit on the toilet, you're looking at those statements, which sounds so funny, but instead of sitting on your phone, like you don't do it. Instead of sitting on your phone while you're in the bathroom, that's what they have. And then on their mirror, they have a different set, just about who you are, again, things like your identity and your worth is on their bathroom mirror, which is really cool that they kind of have two sets there so that while you're getting ready, you can look at those things too.
Yeah, I was thinking like, I need to get a declaration of who God is and declaration of who I am in God, put them both up on my bedroom wall, just because that is stuff we need to fight to remember, especially with just the anxiety and shame that seems to be so rampant with people of our generation.
Yeah.
I was like, you don't have to get it right, you can't get it right. But it's just remembering who you are. That's really, really important. One thing Mom points out a lot is that God calls his people to remember.
Yes.
Remember what God did for our ancestors. So remember your testimony, but remember like, hey, God messed a lot with physics in Egypt. That actually happened. And that same God is in personal relationship with you. So remembering that. And I think it's been made clear this last week in just general True North policies. Our family is very pro-Israel. So like the Jews still exist. That doesn't happen for anybody else.
Right, right.
God's faithfulness in that, just remembering who he is, what he's done. Like, God, what is man that you think of him?
And that's why I love the biblical feast so much. I think it is so cool that we have that class here at the school. And I don't know about you guys, but at least in our area here in Pennsylvania, we've seen a lot of resurgence towards, kind of like that old church calendar and acknowledging those church seasons like the biblical feasts, like, even Lent. I think for a long while, in a lot of ways, certain denominations were trying to make a clear division that we are right, like that's to this particular denomination or religion, so we are going to be very this. And now that there's this kind of coming back, that's like, oh, there's something very sacred to this. And there is something beautiful. And we, like you just said, Ethan, we do need to remember these things and why they're important, not just to us as Christians, but to our world and like you said, the Jewish people as a whole, and being able to honor that. There's that honor we keep talking about this week too.
Yeah, it puts in perspective, like, when you do need to remember like who you are. I think that's often the reaction of like people who want to get their stuff, where it's like, don't declare it because it means to think about you a lot. I'm like, well, yes, but if you compare that with who God is and why this means who you are, like remembering all the grand scheme, when you blend those two, you begin to remember like, hey, God's working I'm a very small hobbit in the grand scheme of things.
Yes.
But you still have a purpose in the grand kingdom, the grand plan of
Yeah.
like America matters, United Kingdom matters, Israel matters. And why do they matter? Well, we'll see how it all works out. But
Yeah, we our church, and I'm pulling it up because once again, I know that Lisa will probably you want to put it in. We did a series called Imago Day. Um,
good reform term.
last yes, last spring. And again, it just really spoke to my heart in that we were made with purpose. We are image bearers of God. And, we look at our culture today and we wonder why there is so much anxiety, depression, confusion about purpose and identity is because we've wandered so far away from it and what our purpose was and who we were created and what we were created to be. And so if we can remind our children and make sure that they know that by the time that they are teenagers, and like I said, there's no time limit on this. Okay. Just the other day, my mom was telling me how she told a friend that if she needed prayer, she'd call me. Like there's no time. And I was like, oh, you're calling me? Like you're having a friend call me for prayer? I was like, oh, and that's not a toot my own horn thing. That was just my mom had never done anything like that before. She had never suggested something like that. And for me, it kind of felt like I'd reached a level of almost spiritual maturity or acceptance from my mom that she was saying, hey, I want you to pray with and for a friend of mine who, is going through this right now. And so in a very nonchalant way, really spoke life and brought confidence to me and like, oh, prayer really is a spiritual gift that I have and something that I need to step into. There's no time limit here. I'm grown and married with my own children, right? So don't feel like, if you have kids out of the house or Ethan, like you said, your dad still, prays over you guys and everything. And that kind of even goes back to the dinner table thing that we talked about on Monday, Tuesday, I don't know.
This week.
Of take advantage of the dinner table. How was your day? Wow, that was really brave. What did you do today? Wow, that was, what? I saw you talk to that kid at the playground and invite them to play with you. I saw you interact with that lady at the grocery store. You showed real empathy and compassion. And, I want you to know that I saw that. You can do that at the dinner table. That's that honor thing again, it doesn't have to be private before bed. You can give that shout out at the dinner table in front of the family and speak life into your children that way too. Dinner table is a powerful place, man. We keep saying it. The dinner table is a powerful place.
Yeah, good stuff. Mom, any comments?
Yes, sorry, it took me a second. Anna, any books you'd recommend for people just to get, or podcasts or TED Talks or anything, resources? As I know you mentioned Priscilla Schreier. I always feel like I mess up her name, but
yeah, it's okay. You know what? Honestly, I'm on like I said, the Clarkson family, Sally and Clay Clarkson. I've been listening to Sally's podcasts. They're usually fairly short. She has one called Tea Time with Sally, and she lives in England half time. And so it's always just lovely. She actually did a great one on Tolkien a few weeks ago. Yeah, but I, as a younger homeschool mother, again, but has worked in youth and everything for quite some time. But as somebody who's now homeschooling my children and homeschooling a child with exceptionalities, just like she did with her one son, actually all four of their kids, I really relate to her. And I have just found her and Clay's words to be so life-giving to me and affirming. And, and she says all the time, we are not perfect. We are not perfect parents. We're giving you the highlights and the things that worked for us. We're not necessarily giving you all the things that we tried that did not work, right? And so that's always something to remember. But I have just really enjoyed their resources. Like I said, I have no affiliation with them. I've never met them. I know she was just at the Wild and Free conference down in Texas a few weeks ago. So again, I'm sure a lot of people have probably at least heard of Sally. Clay is kind of the more quiet one. But Life Giving Home and Life Giving Parenting. So far for me, kind of on my journey through this myself, like everything that I said today is speaking just as much to myself as I am to everybody else. I do not have it figured out. This was a lot of fun to kind of dig into and find these resources.
Always when you speak, it's like you get to go through it.
Yes, you have to. And so I obviously don't ever want anybody to be like, she has a 4-year-old, she has no idea what she's talking about. You would be a little right. I do not have adult children like you do. But kind of like Clay and Sally, this is working.
Yeah.
And I have seen, again, like Ethan, you guys did a great job doing things like that with your kids, and they can now attest to it. So I'm seeing multiple families that have, are a few steps ahead of me that are instilling and doing a lot of these practices in their daily rhythms and in their home. And their children are turning out pretty solid. So feel like it's not a bad route to go.
Yeah. We loved Forever Ruined for the Ordinary by Joy Dawson. She worked with, do you know that book? It's an older book. She worked with, I want to say Navigators for a long time, but I might have the organization wrong, but her book on prayer is really terrific. And the family blessing, I'm totally blanking on the author. He's a really popular speaker in Christian circles, but he taught, I'll have to ask David, but he's not here right now. So yeah, there's some really good books on family blessing. I love how you reframed that for your daughter when she was like, I'm not brave. Yeah, you did this brave thing. Like brave for a 4-year-old is so different than brave for us. And if we can reframe it for our kids, that's so helpful to them. Like you don't have to, do what I would do because you can't, but you can do what you can do. That was a sweet story.
Yes, and she's my wild child, so she's doing brave things all the time, even if she doesn't realize it.
So this is my pressing question. Okay, did you or your husband have blonde hair when you were little? Because you have such little blondies in your house.
Oh my goodness. Funny story, neither of us. We are both dark haired with brown eyes. My husband is actually fairly high percentage of Native American. But we do both have blonde and blue eyes recessively. His mom is blonde with blue eyes. My mom has blue eyes. And so like we know where it came from. We totally have it. But the fact that we managed to nail every recessive gene possible, not once, but twice, because everybody was like, oh, the second one is going to come out looking just like you guys. She's going to have dark hair. She's going to have brown eyes. And didn't happen. So yeah, it's kind of a running joke. Athena has done the typical, toddler thing. You go to the grocery store, she wants the candy on the shelf in the aisle because apparently grocery stores hate parents. And then she's like, I don't want to leave because she wants the candy, right? My husband's standing there going, oh my gosh, she looks nothing like me. I'm a big man with a beard. And this very cute, adorable child is screaming that she does not want to leave with me. So as you can imagine, that has been a thing a few times. But yes, it is recessive. We know where it came from. It's just not what we look like.
Oh my gosh. We have a funny story about our second daughter who is white blonde, or was as a little one. And we would go on these dates with our kids. So we had 2 at that point. So we would always go to the bookstores in California because they always had play areas and awesome stuff going on. And my husband was carrying, he told my daughter it's time to go. And she's like, no, I'm not going. And he said, it's time to go. She refused to come. So he picks her up and puts her over his shoulder. And she's screaming with her hands outstretched over the back of his shoulder, help me, all the way through the bookstore.
Of course, because that's what happens when you have a 3-year-old and
Yeah.
they
might-
they love
she
you so
might-
much.
She might be a little strong-willed, maybe.
Oh, that's I need to read it. My mom keeps telling me, is it Dr. Dobson and the Strong-Willed Child?
Yeah.
That's Focus on the Family.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yep. I gave birth to 2 of those. They're
Yeah.
basically 2 of me. And my mother was laughing at me. We FaceTime earlier today as they were jumping in mud puddles. And again, I have wild animal children. And she goes, you realize that they are you, like doubled. Yes, yes, I am very well aware of that. Thank you, Mother.
That reminds me of the Calvin. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you're good.
I think that reminds me of the Calvin and Hobbes cartoon when it's I think it's a Sunday strip, and Calvin's arguing with his mom on the way back from a car ride, and he gets out and his mom's like, "My only condolences is that I hope someday you get a child just like yourself." And Calvin looks up and is like, "Grandma said she said the exact same thing about you."
Yes. That is the absolute story of my life. My husband often looks at me and goes, "It's you." Like you're arguing with yourself. The one day I think I may have even said like, "Why are you so weird?" And my husband goes, "It's you. It's you. You did it." And I was like, "All right, that's fair. That's fair." And so, yes.
Your genetics.
Yes, they're strong. They are strong. That's for sure.
Cynthia Tobias Ulrich has a book too. I'm losing my voice. On the strong-willed child that is excellent. Her stuff is terrific.
Cynthia who? I'm looking it
Cynthia Tobias Ulrich. Yeah, she's so good.
You mean Cynthia Ulrich Tobias?
Probably. I've been saying it wrong all these years. Okay, yeah. That's
Oh my goodness.
Is so many
And Lisa, you've only been, throwing out resources and talking all week long.
I know, really. I did a thing last hour and I was like, I'm not going to make it through this hour. So I speed talked and got it done. But
Yeah.
It's been a fun week. It has been an amazing week, honestly. So many phenomenal resources.
There we are.
Yes, I'm looking at the back of my book here. Another really good Sally Clarkson one is Different. And she wrote that with her son, I believe, Nathan. And I am fairly certain that he is autistic. And so they wrote a book together about being different and kind of how they walked through that together. And again, she was a homeschool mom too. And so I like a lot of her resources about that. Like I said, my oldest has some extra things going on as well. So anytime you can find a mom who has, raised children with exceptionalities and done it well, is always a win in my book.
Yeah. I like that term exceptionalities.
Yes.
Because I do think, Malcolm Gladwell really touched on this in his books too, is that people with what we would consider disabilities often do crazy things to improvise, adapt, and overcome. And they end up being really exceptional if they can resource themselves enough to overcome those, what would be commonly thought of as disabilities or challenges.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I am, Gina is here. I'm going to promote
Woo,
Gina.
Gina.
I know, I can't wait to hear her talk.
Hi,
So
Gina.
Anna, thank you so much, Anna.